Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible, one brave word at a time. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the most amazing authors of a new book that we have coming out. This is called Shaman Heart, Sacred Rebel. And you guys, this is actually the second book in the Shaman Heart series from our lead authors, Stephanie Urbina Jones and Jeremy Pajer. And before I introduce these lovely women to you, let me just say a humongous thank you to Stephanie and Jeremy. These projects were a little bit different than our usual ones. They got us together in Teotihuacan, Mexico, and we went together to do a healing retreat for both of these book projects. Sacred Rebel was other level, y'all. And Stephanie and Jeremy, you are two of the most amazing people I've ever met. The love and support and energy you show up with is definitely other level, and it helps us step up into ours. And so if you guys could imagine the entire author cast together to create these beautiful stories in this book, yeah, that's how awesome it was. So thank you guys. We wouldn't be here without you. So let me introduce these authors to you today. Emily Greaves is a visionary artist and intuitive painter who lives in Teotihuacan, Mexico. A special thank you to you, Emily, for everything you've done both times we've been down there to make us feel welcome and awesome. And I especially loved shopping in your shop this last time. That was really fun. Emily is our front cover artist for both books, you guys, and we're going to be talking to her in a minute about that. Linda Castor is a spirit-guided counselor ready to help you elevate your mental and physical wellness so you can manifest your greatest dreams and follow the life path your higher self is eagerly waiting to experience. Ruth Souther is a consulting hypnotist and a psycho-spiritual counselor. And Tina Green is with us. She's the founder and transformational coach at Exposing the Roots, where she assists women in cultivating self-love. So Emily, let's talk to you first about your gorgeous, gorgeous art and really tell us about this journey that you've taken as an artist.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's such a pleasure to be here with y'all and to have my art on the cover now of two Shaman Heart books. It's such an honor. My path as an artist has spanned decades. I actually have a BFA degree in art, and that comes in handy sometimes when I need to know some technical things, which is a constant learning process, ongoing. To this day, I'm always learning more. But what really touched my path as an artist, as a creative person, was learning about intentional creativity from my teacher, Shiloh Sophia McLeod of Musea University. This idea of intentional creativity just opened worlds for me, because for years I'd been trying to combine healing work, shamanic healing work, with my painting, and intentional creativity gave me a method and also just like a real inspiration that through my artwork I could bring healing messages to people, and the very way in which I paint is healing for myself in every brushstroke, every dot that I make, every color that I choose. And that this serves as an inspiration for all of us, that we can be intentional in every creative act, whether it's writing a poem or cooking a meal or singing a song or painting a painting, or creating a business. Whatever it is, every creative act can be something that can ripple out into the world and have an uplifting, healing effect. And so the paintings really began developing in this way when I moved here to Teotihuacan 19 years ago. And so these images that you see on the covers of the books are really infused with healing intent, intent for connection, to inspire us, to awaken to this fact that we are all connected, whether we're aware of it or not. And the painting that is on the cover of Sacred Rebel, Shaman Heart Sacred Rebel, is actually a detail of a larger painting. And it's sort of the part of the painting that really sums it all up. This feather that for me is a message from the divine that we are connected. Whenever I find a feather, it's a reminder of that connection, and also the fact that we really can fly. We can fly in our dreams. We can move beyond those limits that we struggle with during our lifetimes, those obstacles, that we can find a way to take flight. And it's a particularly important painting, just in the story of me and Stephanie, in our longtime friendship, that we had conversations about what that painting means. The painting is called Breathing into the Bones, and really takes this idea that something that we might, find to be dead or cut off or completely lifeless in our lives, mostly ourselves, when we're completely asleep, that through our intention, we can reanimate and breathe spirit back into and revive and reincarnate, resuscitate those creative projects. Ultimately, the greatest work of art is ultimately our own lives. So that's there's a whole lot of story behind the cover art for this particular book. And I'm so honored to be here with you and have that art be part of this beautiful circle.
Yeah, we're grateful to you for it. It's beautiful. I resonate with so many things that you just said. Feathers and the big birds are definitely my signs too. So when feathers end up on my books, I'm like, oh, thank you, universe. That's been really cool. Emily, thank you so much for being here. Linda, tell us about your amazing chapter that you wrote for Sacred Rebel.
I'd be delighted to. Thank you for having us on. I have lucky chapter 13 called Artistic Soul Writing and Healing Trauma with Your Heart Voice. Much like what Emily was saying, we all have different stories. So my story is that I had the courage to leave a terribly terrifying, emotionally abusive marriage, and how the love for my child freed me to give me that strength and courage to leave it for her. And then later, of course, looking back for myself as well. And I also describe how all of this started in my childhood, to inspire readers to know that anyone can have the courage to and go within themselves to free themselves from this any terrifying situation, people, or whatever, that we've been trained, indoctrinated from childhood to fear. And that's why I love us calling it Sacred Rebel, because I believe we all are sacred rebels, all of us. It's a birthright. And anyway, so in freeing myself and looking within, I found my creative self. Once again, I think we all have it, just like Emily was saying. So I found the artist, the musician, and the writer. So in expressing myself through these modalities, I found myself even more. When I would paint something on canvas, I saw my personality, and it was like, oh my gosh, there I am. So it's just it's a wonderful awakening and a wonderful experience that we had it in Teotihuacan. And I'm so grateful for that moment. I'm grateful for this moment. And once again, gratitude takes us in wonderful, grand places in this world. So I'm excited about expanding and doing more joyful things in this world.
I love what you said when you said you painted and then you said or thought, there I am. I want to go back to that for a second, like that feeling that you're seeing what you fill in the blank.
I love that you said the feeling, because that's key, is how do you feel when you see what you wrote or what you did, and when shame was present, I would want to take a knife and stab my paintings, and my husband said, Linda, put it underneath the bed and don't look at it. And then you keep going. And then down the road, look at it and then you'll see something different. And he was so right, because I saw the transformation of who I am now through that first painting. And so that's just the beautiful thing about coming into our own and just allowing and stop judging ourselves. And art needs to be fun. It's supposed to be fun. And people, well-meaning others, maybe even teachers, have said things to us that made us feel like we had to be perfect at it or whatever. So we come into this world doing great things for ourselves, but then we get all these contaminated others coming into our head, and then we live out a few of those lifetimes or decades until we come back into our own.
And creativity as an awareness process, right? Like there's been times I've written things and then I look at it and I'm like, whoa, you think that? And that's like, I get to have a talk with myself about like, you know, who I really am and what I really think, and those beliefs that come out on the paper. And then I get to question them, you know, getting it out of your head and onto paper, or getting it out of your heart and onto the canvas. I think it's pretty cool.
Briefly, you and I love poetry, writing poetry, and I know that you experience this as well. The words just come. They just come, and I just write them and write them and write them. And I'll look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, they all rhyme and everything. Like I didn't plan that. It's just so beautiful. So just allowing and surrendering is so.
I'm definitely a rhyming geek when it comes to my poetry. I love it when they come out in rhyme. Oh, Ruth, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so happy to be here with all of you wonderful women and appreciate this moment in time. So my chapter is On a Wing and a Spell, Cutting the Cords of Dysfunctional Loyalty. And I realized that dysfunctional loyalty is a pattern I have had my entire life. And it wasn't until I started writing the chapter for this book that I realized just how big it really was. So what it amounts to is that when I would stay within a group or a spiritual group, and my chapter is about a spiritual home I had for 15 years, and made every excuse in the world why I needed to be there, no matter what happened, no matter how it ended up. In the end, I always felt like I was doing something for the bigger, greater good. And finally, one day I just broke and I drove out of there and I never went back. And it was a heartbreak. It was cutting that cord, but it was so hard because I loved those people and I loved that land. But I had to draw the line at one point. And I remember, I'm not much of a crier, but I remember being so angry, and it was just devastating. And I think I stepped back from my spirituality for at least 5 years. I didn't even want to be involved. So when I realized at that point that I'm writing the chapter, that this has happened multiple times in my life, and every group I've gotten into, for the greater good, I want to be of service. I want to be there. I want to fulfill. I want to do whatever it needs to happen. And instead, what happens is I just find myself being sucked down into this dysfunctional loyalty. And I can't leave. I can't leave. If I leave, who's going to take up the slack? Everybody. I mean, there's this ego involved in that. And so this awareness of how my ego has played into this trip. And in my medicine, I say, when I have clients ask, why does this keep happening? It is usually because they have this loyalty to whomever or whatever it is that they're being called to be of service, or a marriage or whatever, and they don't know how to get out, and they don't see the patterns. So it's really about looking at patterns in our lives and why we just keep going back to the same method, and it is hard. And speaking of shamanic breath work and all of that, in one breath work, I remember being in the spiral and standing at the very top and looking down, and it just went, and I could see every instance of every single time I did this. And it was after I had broken away from this other group. But wow, when you realize these huge patterns, it is pretty amazing.
Yes, recognizing your patterns can be profound transformation. Your chapter resonated with me on so many different levels. My heart led through your chapter, just feeling for you, and what you came to, the realizations, but then the actions that you took. I mean, that's brave, girl. So, and you know, not everybody can recognize it. Not everyone will be willing to wake up in the middle of something like that that's going on. I don't know. I just want to kind of give you a little kudos for that, and also for deciding to share this story out loud with everybody, and so that we could recognize it in ourselves too. Anything else you want to say about that?
Well, I appreciate your kind words, because it is hard to share this particular story. I did eventually make amends, basically, or not amends, but I eventually did talk with these folks again, and they may end up reading that chapter. And I had a little fear around that, but it's the truth for me, my perspective. And I think it's important for people when they're starting to look at their patterns, that it's your perspective, not anyone else. And that's how you go forward, and that's how you move past all of these traumas.
One other special thanks to you, and also to Tina for being part of kind of the team that held us in Mexico. I know I am grateful, and I know many of the group are grateful to both of you for doing that. I just wanted to recognize that out loud here. Gosh, a trip like that doesn't get done without a team of conscious, compassionate, awesome people. So thank you, and Tina, for being part of that. Tina, speaking of Tina, tell us about your amazing chapter.
Well, it was, I have to say, it was such a privilege to be helping to hold the container when we were in Teotihuacan. Such a powerful week we had together. My chapter in this book is called Taking a Stand for Me, ! Transferring codependence, transforming codependence into self-love. And really the chapter is kind of walking through the unlikely story that I have of starting in my teenage years and starting to rebel as a teenager, not really knowing why, not really knowing what I was rebelling against. I just had the need to rebel. I had a lot of anger and a lot of unexpressed feelings. And so I became a punk rocker in the 80s. I was one of those 80s punk rock girls. And I, so it kind of starts out with me. You too, Emily?
You might have a few of us in here.
Yeah. You know, and it started out with kind of some of the adventures I had on that, you know, on that path, and really expressing those feelings and finding relief in doing things like being in a mosh pit, or, you know, just listening to that intense punk music of the 80s. And then sort of moving forward into my adult life, I had become a master at things happening to me that were just damaging, really, and stuffing them down and being able to move forward with my life. But after years and years of stuffing things down, you know, my heart had gotten really closed off, which benefited me to a certain extent, because I had a really amazing career, because I focused only on that for so long. And, you know, but you know, so the whole path of really discovery and proving myself and discovering things about myself led up to the point where I was longing for love. And I eventually, in my 30s, met my husband, had 2 children, and that turned out to be the biggest initiation I could ever have asked for. You know, being in an intimate relationship with 3 people, my husband and my 2 daughters, and having to just surrender over and over again. So really, but what showed up for me, the big mirror that showed up for me, is my my complete pattern. This is where I discovered my patterns of being deeply codependent in all of my relationships. And what that means is I was focusing my energy outside of myself, looking for love, acknowledgement, acceptance, all of that outside of myself, and really focusing on meeting everybody else's needs, all of that at the expense of me. always putting myself last. And it was pretty extreme. So, really my healing path has been around, and the core of this chapter is really around shifting that codependence and really focusing on me. And when I focused on me, what showed up was self-love. And everything I write about these days is really about cultivating self-love, because it was so transformative to me. And I really feel that it's foundational for living a happy and fulfilling life. So really that's what the chapter, what it was about. Once I realized that codependency, I took a stand for myself. That's how it felt. Like, I am standing up for me, and I'm going to focus on me. And then I transformed my codependency into self-love, and it has changed everything in my life. And a big part of that too, and is for me, in the healing work that I did, was working with my inner child. And doing a lot of work around, discovering what needs weren't met, and, what agreements I made with myself as a child that changed my behavior for the rest of my life. So, I also offer in the medicine part of my chapter, a kind of a meditation to really connect with your inner child and start that process of discovering what your inner child needs.
So this is a perfect place to tell our viewers about what this is. You all, so thanks to all of you for putting your hearts and souls on these pages. Thanks for saying yes to the project, but not just for that, for actually taking up my challenge of writing your heart out on those pages. But as Tina was saying, you're going to have their medicine. Each author is offering an experience in the chapter for you. And I think you guys would all agree that, we need all of the stories, we need all of the unique voices, and we definitely need the toolkit packed with all the different kind of medicine we can try, right? Because not one thing is going to work for everybody. And it's just one of the things I love so much about these collaborations. But let's get to it today and talk about what it means to be a sacred rebel. Linda, you're up first on this one. Tell me really personally, what did that mean for you?
Well, as I said before, for me, it's freedom, and that we all have that sacred rebelness in all of us. Like, we all have, it's a birthright, in my opinion. But as a therapist, I have to go, okay, there's rebel, and then there's sacred rebel. And so I was thinking about this yesterday, and rebel can be self-sabotaging, but the sacred rebel is self-empowering. So there's a big difference between the two of them. And in writing this chapter, I noticed my angst, like a part of me rose up as well that was angry and felt justified. And boy, I started going on that path, and I'm like, I'm gonna write another book about this. And and then I realized, wait a minute, which path do you really want to go on here? Like, you already said what you needed to say, you let it out. Do you want to stay in the old story, or you want to move forward? And of course, the answer was to move forward. So
I think some of that kind of writing can just be the feng shui. You need to clear it out, right? And so it's okay to go into some of that sometimes. But I really do love what you said, the difference being self-sabotage or self-empowerment. Like, what are you going to choose? With awareness, we get the choice, right? And I'm with you. I'm choosing more empowering, on more things that align with joy, more things that I can bask in the awesomeness, Okay, Ruth, how about you? What's it mean to you to be a sacred rebel?
Well, first, I think it's kind of hilarious that a sacred rebel that I am is also dysfunctionally loyal. There's some sort of weirdness there, right? But in the end, what it really means to me is the intuition, is listening to my own heart, my own mind, my own higher self, that when I am in a situation that means being authentic, stepping into my own truth, taking back my power. It's all about being the sacred rebel. It's not being about trying to cause trouble or spite or or revenge or any of those things, which I will say that has crossed my mind occasionally. But that's not what it's about. It's about listening to that gut that says this is not a good place to be. This is a great place to be. Reason I took on the very first sacred Shaman Heart book is because my intuition said, do it. And I didn't even question it. And I feel like the Sacred Rebel is exactly like that. Listen to what you are knowing in your heart and then just step in and own it. That's what Sacred Rebel means to me.
I love it. I've heard that do it voice plenty of times. I usually take action on that too. All right, Tina, you're up next on this one. What's it mean to you?
It's kind of similar to what both of them said, but really taking a stand for yourself. Because we were all, as children trained to be a certain way. And at some point in your life, you realize, or I realized that this doesn't work for me. I want to move forward in a different way. And I feel like that's the moment when rebellion becomes sacred, when you really realize what it is and moving, that you want to move forward in a different way and take a stand for yourself and really do what's right for you as an individual.
Yeah, I love, I'm going to repeat the awareness word so many times in these interviews because I think you all are giving people golden nuggets of awareness. And that's what that is. Like you look at that and recognize it, and then you can do something very different with that, knowledge. Okay, Emily, it's hard to go last on these, I know. What's it mean to you?
Well, for me, I think being a sacred rebel is that even when you're confronted with all the evidence that the world is a terrifying, horrible, dark, scary, violent place, that you choose to see beauty, harmony, creativity, connection. You seek it out actively. It's like, I think for me, the being creative in the face of what appears to be so much destruction around us is like the most rebellious thing. It's like choosing to live. And so yeah, I see every time any of us in this beautiful world makes a creative act, chooses to make a creative act, that we're being sacred rebels.
Chooses to live. I don't know, that gave me goosebumps. Yeah. I feel like it's sad that that would be the rebel. Like then, like, yeah, I know. I love that though. I love listening to all of you talk about this in your beautiful ways. So you are all guides, facilitators, healers. I think authentic healers don't like to say that they fix people because we know that that's not what we do. We empower people to connect to their own inner wisdom and own inner healer. Ruth, I want to know what the most important thing to you about connecting to that inner wisdom is. Like if you were going to talk to our viewers, how would you help them connect to that place?
That is such a great and profound question. And I ask them to really look deep inside themselves. And that is one reason why I am a hypnotist and a psycho-spiritual counselor, is because to tell, as in writing, you tell the story or you show the story. And when I'm working with someone, show yourself, look at how you act, look into the actual details of what you do, and then really meditate on that part of it. It's like, how do you recognize your intentions? How do you know if you're on autopilot or if you're actually working with your own authentic truth? And I do that through the tools that I use in my work. I don't
And
know if
there,
that answered the question.
oh, there's so many different ways, right? And so that's another reason why I think bringing everybody together to give people hope about that is really important. If something hasn't worked for you, you might try this. There's always going to be something. So yeah, I love the way that you answered that. Tina, how about you for this one? Like, what's something that you want everybody to know about connecting to their inner healer and inner wisdom?
Yeah, I think connecting, I think it's obviously really, really important. And I find that everybody has to find their own way to connect to themselves that works for them. And I think the breath is a great way to do it. There are so many different modalities of breath work that people can resonate with and really connect to themselves. There's meditation, there's yoga, there's so many different even physical activities to connect to your body. So I would just encourage people to really look in the mirror, like even like first thing in the morning, like look in the mirror and say, I love you in the mirror while looking into your eyes. Like that's a great way to connect to yourself, but continue to look inward and to discover about yourself. Because I think when we do that and when we're peeling off the layers, there's so much freedom that we can have that we can't even imagine until we have it. And then we're like, wow. So yeah. And it all starts really with connecting yourself and looking in.
It is a wow, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Emily, how about you? What's something you want to tell everyone about that connection?
Well, it's such a perfect question after what probably sounded really doomsday gloomy, even my response of what is sacred rebel. But I think what I was getting at with that, and it applies to this question, that I think it's learning how to see and shift our perspective can be so helpful. I often think of this, it's really like a technical art experiment or practice to open your eyes and really study light and shadow. And I've always thought on a spiritual level, the sun shines equally on the beautiful rose in the garden as it does on the garbage on the sidewalk. It doesn't judge or distinguish. And likewise, the shadow is also always there in this perfect harmony, no matter what the light is shining on. And so I think a practice, a way to find connection is to actually just like open your eyes and observe. And as you observe without those judgments about what you're observing, you realize like that we are all connected. We are all one. The light is shining equally upon all of us. So
I love that. Yes, more awareness, this beautiful, beautiful awareness. And be curious about that light, right? That curiosity. Oh my goodness. That's, I think, one of the secrets to life. Okay, Linda, what do you want to add? What do you want to tell people about making that connection to their inner wisdom?
Absolutely. So this morning I did a walk talk therapy session in the park. I love doing those and my clients love them. And so we're walking along and my client was starting to go into anxiety mode and she did this and he did that. And this person totally wants to go within, but has the habit of going out. So it's about redirecting and bringing them back to who they really are. And I said, just put your hand over your heart and pretend you're breathing through your heart instead of your lungs, and just get back to this. When you ask a child, who are you? What's your name? They don't go, hi, I'm Linda. They go, hi, I'm Linda. They point here. It's like they know. It's like they inherently know where the center is. So it's about just gently guiding people back to where they really want to go, and inviting love. Even loving pain that we have in our body, because if we hate our pain, then we're hating part of ourselves. And so in the ego gets in the way. She was complaining about how the ego gets in the way because I was talking about meditation, and I said, just let it all pass through, and get mad at it or anything. Just say, oh, I see you, there you are. And you can go on past through and just keep going with your meditation. And really our big thing today was go within using meditation, find what works for you. And I know that some people have said the process is frustrating, but love yourself through the process of doing that.
Yes, I love it. And it may not surprise you guys that I'm going to say journal. I want you to use a notebook to connect. And, journaling and writing is an awareness tool. Painting is an awareness tool. Breathing is an awareness tool. Anything that brings you in to observing your body sensations, your thoughts in your mind, the sun shining down on the rose or the garbage. It's all beautiful, beautiful ways to connect. I think the biggest thing for me has been quieting my mind first so that I can connect with something else aside from those thoughts coming in all the time. All right, I have one more juicy question for all of you. If you hang out with Stephanie and Jeremy long enough, you're going to hear the phrase, we laid our hearts on the altar. And they invited us really directly to do that over and over again. They continue to invite us to do that. Tina, I wonder for you, that sounds scary. At least it did at first to me. I had a visual of this chunk of heart on a slab and I was going to sacrifice it. Like that's the visual I got when I started to hear that phrase, right? So what do you want to say about that? What's it meant to you to lay your heart on the altar?
That's actually a really easy question for me. What it's meant for me is vulnerability. And I, when I had told you before that I had closed off my heart, really it was about, like kind of breaking down that wall and being vulnerable and saying things, really being vulnerable and saying things that I've never said out loud before, sharing things that I've never shared with a group of people before. And that is, that to me is laying my heart on the altar. And it has served me well to do that.
Because the vulnerability really is our ultimate strength. And it might, I think a lot of people will ask writers, oh, it must make you so nervous to publish your work and say these things. And a lot of the times we're just worried about what other people are going to think about it when we're vulnerable like that, when we put ourselves out there. And sometimes in my life, it's not that kind of story that I'm afraid of telling. It's sometimes just saying, I love you. And opening up my heart for possible rejection. That could be what that means. But I don't know how you got me down on that road with the vulnerability. But that's been a theme really that's come up over and over about this. Vulnerability is going to mean something different to all of you, right? Emily, how would you answer this question about laying your heart on the altar? How is that for you personally?
I think for me personally, it's a process of gratitude. It seems that for me, gratitude is the thing that most quickly opens my heart. And there's even like a movement that I feel like a sensation that I feel from it that is like to place my heart on the altar is like I'm bringing out my gratitude and holding it in my hands and laying it on the altar. And that just like thinking of something I'm grateful for, whether something very minute and specific or something grand like beauty and connection, has this effect then of allowing love to flow back in. It creates connection for me. So
it definitely has one of those
Yeah.
For those of you who can't see us right now, we're sort of opening our chests and hands to the camera. Yeah, it has that feel. It has that expansion feel, literal postural expansion too, which is interesting, right? Linda, how about you? What's it meant to you to lay your heart on the altar?
Well, at first I laid my broken, angry heart on the altar and was happy to do so because, hey, help, I need help. Help me, somebody help me. And then when I started to grow in self-love and realizing all the healing, amazing healing we did in Mexico together, all these beautiful authors, we're now a big tribe, then my heart healed. And so there's that perspective. Another perspective is I was recently on a vacation where I was walking along the beach and I said, okay, I surrender. Like, I surrender. And then halfway along the way, I realized I hadn't really surrendered. Like my intention's good, but it wasn't happening. And so the next day I did it again. I'm like, okay, really, I mean it. I surrender. I trust you. I trust you, universe. And then as I was finishing my walk, I felt it. I felt that I had truly done that. And that was incredible to me.
I appreciate the different perspectives of that and the stages that we're in and what it means at whatever stage we're in, right? I love that. All right, Ruth, you're going to close us out on this question. How is it meant for you to lay your heart on the altar?
It is always humbling. Every single time that I've been with Stephanie and Jeremy and been through this process, I feel the humbleness and the gratitude is mentioned. One thing I want to point out is that to sacrifice means to make sacred. And so when I offer this opportunity to myself to lay my heart on the altar, I am asking myself to let go of the big ego, the ego that gets in my way and allows me, and then I'm allowed to lay my whole heart, my whole trust out there with the universe, with them, to say, okay, here I am going to put all this out there. And it is, to me, it's like letting go of ego, the big ego, not the confidence, but the big ego that gets in our way. And that's kind of been mentioned today about how our conscious mind can get in the way. But to sacrifice all those things, to lay it out there and just say, I'm going to make all this sacred here. You can have it. It gives me goosebumps right now thinking about it. I had the fun moment of playing the Angel of Death when we were down in Teo. I love playing the Angel of Death. But the question was always, what are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to make sacred to enable yourself to actually release and accept your heart opening and filling up with love and unconditional love? So unconditional love is the answer.
To pretty much everything, isn't it? Oh my goodness. Ruth, Emily, Tina, Linda, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here to share it with everyone. Thanks, ladies.
Our pleasure.
Thank
So,
you.
you guys, I hope you realize this is so much more than a book we're talking about, right? This is a community of people who really care, who are very passionate and are there for you. So for our viewers, if something gave you the goosebumps or it made you curious or whatever, just scroll on down to the show notes. I've got all of our authors and our beautiful artists hooked up with their websites and their links, and they are very generously there for you to answer the question, to take, help you take that next step on your journey. And I'm so grateful to all of you for being those kind of badasses who really are changing the world, and you're doing it in yourself first, so that you can beam that beautiful light on everyone else that you guys touch. You're amazing. And of course, you guys can join us for a book launch party. We're going to have one of those on June 2nd at 10 a.m. Eastern. I've got some information down below about where you can find our Zoom information for that. And if you're listening to this interview after that June 2nd date, well, that means you can hop over to Amazon because the book is ready. You can grab your copy. And lastly, today, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone. Bye, ladies.